Assignment. This is going to be the first of a series of assignments that we're going to do throughout this quarter that'll introduce you guys to working with scientific literature. So I'm talking about scholarly journal articles, peer-reviewed articles. These are all kind of referring to the same thing. The reason why we're going to take so much time focusing on this is because being able to find and to read these peer-reviewed journal articles is going to open up a lot of doors to you in terms of troubleshooting problems in your future careers. For example, let's say you're working in a hatchery and you heard someone talking about how artificial substrate might be helpful in juvenile rearing ponds to make your salmon more likely to survive out in the wild. You could prototype your own, spend a lot of time coming up with your own design, or you can go into Google Scholar and type salmon hatchery substrate and look at all of these different articles from people that have already went through that process, and you can just copy their design and see what worked and what didn't work. This is going to make it so that you can answer a lot of questions that someone else who doesn't know how to navigate scientific literature cannot or would have difficulty answering. So that's what we're going for in these sets of assignments. So in this assignment, you guys are going to get started on your first view of the scientific journal article that we're going to focus on, which is about evaluating steelhead kelp treatments in the Yakima River Basin. So this is about steelhead repeat spawners, which what kelps are. So when you're reading a scientific journal article, it is different than reading like a textbook or reading an article online. These are often really dense articles. They're talking about a scientific study, and I think most important thing to recognize when you're reading scientific journal articles is to understand that you likely will not be able to understand every single word that's in this article, and that is okay. Especially when they're talking about the methods and the results, it can get really far into the statistics, really complicated things you don't necessarily need to understand in order to get the general idea from this article. So when you're reading a scientific article, the best thing to do is to start out with the abstract. So shown here, the abstract is a summary of the entire paper, and it's what you guys are going to focus on in your assignment, which I'll describe in a little bit later in this video. So the abstract is a good first place to start to get an overall view of what the authors did, why they did it, what they found, and why is it important. So you always want to skim the abstract first before you dive into actually reading the paper, because you don't want to waste your time reading a paper that might not be very useful to your research question. Next, that follows the introduction. So that starts here and goes on to the second page here. The introduction is really valuable background information. So if you're just trying to get general information about a general topic, like for example, if you're just trying to learn about what kelps are, you might want to start with the introduction section. It's also going to talk about what previous research has been done, what the study was trying to find, and kind of the purpose of them doing this study. So that's the introduction. Next, we have the methods section, which starts here. The methods section is often really dense. And again, this is a section that I would recommend just skim reading over. It's going to tell you where the research study took place. It's going to tell you about the different treatment groups, what they did, and it gets really, really detailed. So you can see here that it actually tells you what like river mile they were doing the sampling on, or what size tote the fish were kept in. For most part, this is not going to be something that you need to know exactly what size tote they kept their steelhead in, but you might want to read the research or read the method section in more detail if, for example, you were trying to repeat this study, or if you had some questions about how valid this study actually was. Those are examples of times that you might want to go in the method sections in more detail. But for the most part, you're just going to be skimming it and getting a general idea of what they did. And especially when it starts talking about statistics like here, that's mostly stuff that at your level you can just kind of skim right over. So again, don't feel like you have to understand 100% of the study. Next is the results section. The results section tells in very objective phrasing what exactly they found. Again, this can be a pretty dense section. Normally, you're just skimming over the results section because in the discussion section, which is the last section, This is where they're going to summarize the results and talk about the most important results that they found and also why they're more important in a bigger context, also ideas for future research, things like that. So really the abstract, the introduction, and the discussion section are the three sections that you would pay the most attention to in reading a scientific journal article, where the method section and the results section you would just kind of be skimming over unless you were trying to replicate a study or had some questions about how good the study was. So it's kind of an overall view of what a scientific journal article is. So for your assignment, you're going to be citing this article and also reading the abstract. So you guys will read the other sections in future assignments. So for this assignment for today, just read the abstract. So for your assignment, you're going to be reading the abstract and you're going to be highlighting the different sections that summarize the introduction, the method, the results, or the conclusion. And so I did an example here from another scientific journal article of what I'm kind of looking for. So this is another abstract from a different article. You can see that like this here is talking about the background of the study. And so I highlighted it in yellow to indicate that it's the introduction. Next, here is the method. So they're talking about what they actually did. And this might be super short, just one sentence like it is in this example. I highlighted that in blue. In green, I've highlighted the summary of the results section. And in gray, I've highlighted the summary of the discussion section. So for your assignment, you're going to be doing this on that Trammell et al. 2016 paper that we were just looking at. All of the text in your introduction should be highlighted, so you should not have any unhighlighted text. The other part that you're going to be working on in this assignment is formatting your citation for the Trammell et al. 2016 paper that you guys are going to be reading. There's a link to this Fisheries and Aquaculture Program Sources and Citation Formatting Guide in the assignment directions on Canvas. This is a modified version of the American Fisheries Society Citation Formatting Guide. So this is the industry standard in the fisheries industry. So you guys are going to be doing reference citation formatting. So you'll want to scroll to page 2 where it says reference section citations. And we are doing a journal article. So you guys are going to be following this format down here. So the first thing that you'll need to do is to identify all these pieces. So you'll want to find the authors, the date, the article title, journal title, volume, issue, and page number. You guys will do that with your Trammell et al. Paper. I have another example here of a different paper. So we have here is the article title. This is the author. So in this particular paper, there's only one author, but in your paper, there is more than one author. The other information is typically found at the top of your paper, or sometimes it's found down here at the bottom. You'll just have to look around. Different journals will format it in different ways. So here we have Molecular Ecology. That's the name of the journal that published this paper. 2007 is when this article was published. And then typically for the volume, most of the time it's written as, so this one's volume 16, comma, and then it gives the page numbers, or sometimes it'll say like the volume with a colon and then the page numbers. If there is an issue, it's usually in parentheses directly following the volume. So in this particular example, there is no issue, so we would just leave that blank. And in your article as well, in Trammell et al., there's only a volume, not an issue. So again, you would just ignore issues for Trammell et al. As well. So then you would rearrange these different components in this format, following all the punctuation guidelines. And then when you are writing the author list here, you'll need to look up above here where it says listing authors, because whether you have one author, like in the example we just looked at, 2 authors or 3 or more authors, you're going to format it in slightly different ways. So you'll just have to look at Trammell et al. And see how many authors they have and which category it would fall into. So this is your citation, example of your citation that you're going to end up with down here.